Friday, May 10th, 2013. The sun is setting over Minneapolis and St. Paul, marking the beginning of a long and busy weekend. While the numerous office buildings deep in the Twin Cities become completely vacant until the following Monday, the former Great Northern Harrison Street Shops is still a beehive of activity as the final preparations are being made for a 2-day rail excursion from Minneapolis to Duluth, Minnesota, and return. The railroading heritage of Midwest America will be operating this trip in conjunction with Amtrak, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway, and the Lake Superior Railroad Museum. However, it will be what's at the head end of this train that will make this trip very special. The lead locomotive will be a 4-year wait worthwhile, a rail fan favorite of the Midwest, making her comeback on the high iron. Built by the American Locomotive Company in Schenectady, New York, Milwaukee Road steam locomotive number 261 rolled out of the factory in July of 1944, classified as an S3 Northern. The wheel arrangement is a 484, meaning that the locomotive has 4 pilot wheels, 8 drivers, each wheel being 74 inches in diameter, and a 4-wheel trailing truck to support both the firebox and cab. For a total of 10 years, the 261 saw regular service based out of Chicago, operating as far west as Omaha, hauling both passenger and freight. But like many other steam locomotives operating in the United States, the 261 became outmatched by the cheaper and more fuel-efficient diesels. In 1954, the 261 was retired from the Milwaukee Road. Fortunately, its final journey to the scrapyards never came to fruition. In March of 1958, the locomotive was relocated to the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as the first of many donated equipment. But this story was not over just yet. In 1991, the locomotive was leased to North Star Rails for a complete restoration to operating condition. In 1993, the 261 was steamed up for the first time in 39 years, ready to embark on a new career as an excursion locomotive. For 15 years, the 261 has traveled all over the Midwest, operating numerous excursions out of Minneapolis under the non-profit Friends of the 261 organization, which took over for North Star Rails in 1995. The locomotive has even traveled as far east as Pennsylvania to as far west as Montana. In 2008, the 261 was taken out of service for a mandatory 15-year rebuild and boiler recertification as part of the Federal Railroad Administration. But as 2009 came and went, dark clouds loomed overhead. At that time, the rebuild came to a complete standstill as the Friends of the 261 dived into negotiations with the National Railroad Museum for an extension on the lease. Unfortunately, after 13 memorable years, the lease fell through due to different opinions between the two organizations. But in every dark cloud, a silver lining shines a hopeful solution. In early 2010, the museum put the locomotive up for sale with the Friends of the 261 and the railroading heritage of Midwest America being the official buyers, thus continuing not only the rebuild itself, but also the locomotive's lease online. Today, after a 4-year absence, Milwaukee Road 261 sits outside her official home of the Harrison Street Shops, looking as good as the day she was steamed out of the factory for the first time. Many of all ages are still present as they marvel over the massive beast. In the background, volunteers set up a stairwell for an easy access inside the cab.
He was here. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know his name. Okay. He was here and he kind of showed up. He was around, and there's another kid named Kyle.
Yep, that's his grandson.
Yeah, and he works with the TJs.
Kyle likes this stuff.
Good, but he knows this stuff.
I like this. Yeah, he does.
It's coming right along.
While inside, we asked Mark Dalquist, one of the crew members of the non-profit organization, how it feels to have the locomotive rebuilt and back in service again.
Feels good. Feels like we never stopped. It feels like we didn't sit 4 years. We're just back here and doing the same old, same old. Sitting and waiting until I have to throw some more coal at it.
It's without doubt a huge feat for the friends of the 261 and the railroading heritage of Midwest America. But the true test will commence tomorrow when the 261 leaves the 14-car train north. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the consist for the next 2 days. Behind the 261's tender is auxiliary tender number 250002, a former Louisville and Nashville tender. It was used on the Norfolk Southern's previous steam program before being purchased by the Friends of the 261 in 1995. Amtrak P42 number 17 will be provided as a helper for this trip. Grand Canyon, a former U.S. Army car, will be provided as the tool car for the locomotive. Minnesota River, a Milwaukee Road sleeper car, will be provided as dormitory for the crew. Winona and Nokomis are former Algoma Central 54-seat coaches, purchased in 1994. Lake Pepin is a 74-seat coach that was once used on the Pennsylvania Railroad as a clocker. It was acquired in 2003. Baggage car number 2450 serves as the organization's concessions car. It used to serve on the Union Pacific Railroad. St. Croix Valley and Wisconsin Valley are lounge cars that once served the U.S. Army. Wisconsin Valley was purchased in 2002, while St. Croix Valley was purchased in 2009. Lambert's Point was once a business car for the Norfolk and Western Railway. Superdome is a Milwaukee Road full-length dome. It's considered to be the pride of the organization's fleet of cars. The rest of the dome cars on this train are all owned by Iowa Pacific. This here is the Skyview, a Santa Fe full-length dome. Prairie View is also a full-length dome, but was used for the Great Northern Railway. Summit View is a former Santa Fe full-length dome, now painted in the color scheme of the Illinois Central. The final car on this train is the Cedar Rapids. It's a sky-topped observation car that once served the Milwaukee Road's Twin Cities Hiawatha. The car was purchased in 1999 by the Friends of the 261 and is also praised as the pride and joy of the fleet. With the last rays of sunlight disappearing into the west, an inbound North Star commuter train passes by the shops as the 261 remains in her usual spot. She'll be ready to go for tomorrow's trip to Duluth. The very next morning found us set up near Van Buren Street, just west of the shops. Although the day has started off blustery, many have already gathered along the tracks to wish the steam-powered train off. With the trip about ready to commence, a BNSF coal train slowly passes through. We'll be seeing more freight trains from the BNSF during the next 2 days, since the Excursion will be traveling along the railroad's former Great Northern Hinckley subdivision. Between Minneapolis and Duluth, we'll have locations set up in Fridley, Andover, Isanti, Cambridge, Brawham, Brook Park, Hinckley, Sandstone, Ascov, Holyoke, and Superior, Wisconsin. The final location will be at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum in Duluth. At around 9:25 a.m., Milwaukee Road 261 gives 2 blasts of her whistle, officially and finally marking the departure of her first excursion in 4 years. We're currently set up just north of Cambridge, near Highway 65. At this moment, the 261 has pulled its train onto a siding in the downtown area to clear the right-of-way for this southbound manifest. A few minutes later, the train leaves Cambridge behind, with its next stop being Hinckley for servicing. While servicing was taking place in Hinckley, we head to Sandstone for our next setup along the banks of the Kettle River at Water Tower Park. Spanning the river is this former Great Northern High Bridge, which the train will now cross over. Between Sandstone and Superior, we set up these next three shots along Highway 23. Just south of Superior is the Namaji River Bridge along Highway 35. This part of the line, however, is not former Great Northern, but instead former SOO Line tracks. It was purchased in the 1980s by the Burlington Northern Railway in order to avoid marshy soil for the rest of the trip from the Twin Cities to both Superior and Duluth. At the Lake Superior Railroad Museum, SOO Line number 2719 sits outside the former Union Depot, awaiting for a most honored guest to arrive. Built by the American Locomotive Company in Schenectady, New York, 2719 rolled out of the factory in 1923, classified as an H-23 Pacific. With 4 pilot wheels, 6 drivers, each being 75 inches in diameter, and a 2-wheel trailing truck under the firebox and cab, this locomotive was used on the SOO Line's passenger service between Chicago, Duluth, and Minneapolis. As time went by, 2719 was used all over the system until the late 50s, when being forced into retirement due to the growing popularity of diesels. The locomotive was donated to the city of Eau Claire, Wisconsin for display in Carson Park in 1960. In 1998, 2719 was restored to operating condition by the non-profit Locomotive and Tower Preservation Fund. Today, the locomotive is on lease to the museum as well as the North Shore Scenic Railroad. 2013 will mark the last year of operation for the 2719, as it'll be going down for its 15-year rebuild later in the fall. Although being an hour late, the 261 glides its train into the museum. Shortly after the arrival, a press conference is made in front of the locomotive with Kent Buellher, the executive director of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum and the North Shore Scenic Railroad. To the right of Ken is Steve Sandberg, Chief Operating Officer for the Friends of the 261, who has also been with the locomotive since 1991.
On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum and North Shore Scenic Railroad, we're welcoming Steve Sandberg, who's president of the Friends of the 261 and the 261, and about 550 guest passengers from the Twin Cities have arrived here for a weekend in Duluth. With me are some of the members of our Board of Directors. Our president is Neil Vanstrom. Representing the Canadian National Railway on the board is Jeff Castellano. This is Steve Sandberg, Friends of 261, and another board member, Scott Racine. Steve is the engineer that brought the engine in. As I said, he's also the president and executive director for the Friends of the 261, a nonprofit group that manages and cares for the engine over the years. And upon the arrival, this has been just rebuilt. I'll let Steve say a little bit about it and explain why we're here. We have a presentation to make at the end of the press conference.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Friends of the 261 and railroad enthusiasts who've joined us from all over the world, from England, Germany, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and all over the United States, we're thrilled to be here in Duluth. This is a great day for railroad enthusiasts all over the world, and we'd like to make an initial contribution to the endowment fund for the museum in the amount of $10,000 to kick off a brand new fund for the museum and start them off on a new track. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. If you have questions of Steve, he will be around for a few moments. The train leaves tomorrow at 12 noon.
Be there and be aware.
Thank you for waiting.
With their successful northbound run completed, the Milwaukee Road 261 will spend the night at the museum until tomorrow's departure at noon. In the meantime, our focus will now be on SOO Line 2719, as it's scheduled to pull a dinner train on the North Shore Scenic Railroad. The North Shore Scenic Railroad operates the former lakefront line of the Duluth and Iron Range Railroad between Duluth and Two Harbors, a distance of 28 miles. For this trip, the 2719 will lead the dinner train as far as Palmer's, 16 miles north of Duluth. Here, the train is traveling along the lake walk as it leaves Duluth an hour late. With the dinner train now in Palmer's, Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range Railway number 193 hooks up to the other end of the train to pull it back to Duluth. The next day, we find ourselves at this former SOO Line trestle that spans over the Black River in Holyoke. A BNSF manifest heads north as we wait for the Milwaukee Road 261 and its train to head back to Minneapolis. We're now set up on this overpass along Highway 23 in Brook Park. The train has left Hinckley after a scheduled servicing stop. We are once again at Van Buren Street as the train arrives back into Minneapolis at around 7 in the evening. At the shops, The 261 is uncoupled to let Amtrak number 17 pull the train forward to unload the passengers. With the train now at a complete stop, the passengers disembark after a successful 2-day rail excursion.
Take care now. Have a safe trip.
We will. Thanks for everything. Thank you. For the nice trip.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. You too. Okay.
Some make their way to their cars in the parking lot, while many stay behind to check out the 261 a bit more and to get their pictures taken in front of the locomotive.
Ready now? Say one. Everybody loud as you can. Say 261. Okay, one more. Loud as you can. 261.
Just like Friday, the last rays of sunlight disappear into the west, this time bringing the busy weekend to a close. However, more work has yet to be completed for both the 261 and her crew.
Let me look and see if we're right here.
As many begin to disperse, save for a few who wish to stay and soak it all in, a fresh load of coal is loaded into the locomotive's tender to begin the process of switching out cars.
Hey, Ed, I'm opening the cylinder cock.
For many, this marks the end of the Milwaukee Road 261's first excursion in 4 years. But for the 261 itself, and her dearest friends, that have kept her alive with a hot fire to this very day, this marks the beginning of a brand new chapter. A chapter with a bright future ahead.